What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Figuring It Out Finance podcast, episode number 60. And this is the podcast where I, Chris Rickenbaugh, am documenting my journey in real estate and business while also talking about travel hacking and personal finance. You can find me on all of the socials at figuringitoutfinance.com, Figuring It Out Finance on TikTok and Instagram, YouTube, and Podbean. If you go to figuringitoutfinance.com, you'll find all the episodes of the podcast where they're posted in the blog section. So, hopping into today's podcast, it's going to be a quick week 5 flip update, but some really, really cool stuff on the way. Partnering up with the realtor who I've been working with for the past couple months here, and we have some really big stuff on the way. So before I kind of give the details on that, we're still working to iron out some of those details and how that's going to work, but it's going to be about 50 properties in a portfolio that we have access to that we're going to be able to flip. So right now, just kind of laying that base and really trying to just kind of set up the business plan and ideas and make sure we're going to set off on a strong foot. So getting into today's episode, week 5 was last week on the flip. And it was a pretty slow week and not much being able to be done, but some really interesting things. My contractor was actually away for the day, on the way to pick up some things for his wife in another state, and found out that he had a speeding ticket in another town or city. And it's one of those where I've heard so many stories of this lately, to where people find out they have speeding tickets in like some random county or random town, and then they end up getting detained. So that happened to him. So nothing crazy. And that's one of the interesting things that they talk with real estate, that things are just going to come up. So the only reason I bring this up is to not make anybody look bad, but it's one of those things to where, if it was a different situation, I have the trust in him that he's going to be able to tell me the truth. And I really appreciated him sharing that with me and saying, hey man, this is what happened. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, oh yeah, I completely understand. He didn't murder anybody, so that's nothing to really worry about there. But that slowed things down for about 2 days there. But another little area that I was having trouble with is the draw. So this is something that I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into, and this is something that I'm really learning on the fly now that on flip number 2 is figuring out how to have the funds a little bit earlier. So something that I didn't really plan for in the beginning was setting my budget up for a little bit more heavy in the beginning to be able to get a bigger draw, to make sure I'm paying off those credit cards that I'm using for the entire project. So when I was looking to pay off about $38,000, because that's what I've spent on the entire project, whether that's contractor payments, whether that's them picking up materials from Lowe's, I sent in that draw request to my lender, and they denied it, saying they could only give me $15,000 because they need to make sure that entire project is done, rather than giving me that full $38,000, because I would have used up basically all the funds, because they only supplied 75% of the project rather than 100% like my first project. So what happened there was I paid the minimum payment on the credit card, so that's not going to be a problem. It's just going to get hit with a little bit of interest, which I really wasn't happy about. So just not super happy about that part, but I completely understand it. So talking to my partner now, she's trying to coach me up a little bit in that area to where I can kind of get ahead on the draws to make sure I have that so that I can be paying off those credit cards. And that's not taking advantage. It's just giving a number to something that the contractor kind of has in his scope of work. So like demo, I could have charged an extra, or I could have budgeted for $5,000 to $10,000 rather than not charging or not putting it on there at all, just putting it under that large umbrella of that contractor payment. So that's something in my next flip that I'm going to be doing is putting a little bit more or giving a number to some of those beginner things like picking up the materials, like the demo. The demo is going to be the big one, ordering materials, because it's no fault of anybody but mine. It's just the lack of knowledge and the lack of experience. So now that I know this, I know how to put those things up front to be able to get that draw money to set myself up in a better position. Because all of that money, it's not like I'm going to go spend it on dinner or anything like that. It's that I'm going to be using for the project. But this helps me out in the financing space so that I don't get behind on those payments. So when I needed that $38,000 and I only got $15,000, if I was a little bit underwater or tighter on cash, that would have really hurt, and that could have been a real big problem. But I was able to pay that minimum payment. I'll have to eat a little bit of interest on those cards, but basically the project is still moving and we're still on schedule, maybe a couple days later, but it should be all complete by the end of this month. So I'm super excited to see how that comes together here in the next couple weeks with drywall going in. Last week was not a whole lot going on. So the upstairs, lots of drywall is going to be going in. The siding is going to be going on the house and getting that brick painted. So now it's going to be white with those black windows and black accents. So super excited to see how it turns out here in the next couple weeks. So you can stay up to date on everything on my socials, on TikTok and Instagram, where I'll be posting those videos weekly. And that is Figuring It Out Finance on both platforms. So just a quick little week 5 update here on the flip. So some really, really cool stuff coming in real estate in these next couple months. Just getting that groundwork laid out on how this business is going to go and how we're going to be able to do maybe 50 to 60 flips next year. So super exciting stuff. And that's about all I got for today. So this is Chris Rickenbaugh signing off for the Figuring It Out Finance podcast, episode number 60. We'll see you on Wednesday for a book review.